What if I told you that one military operation just changed the balance of power in the Caribbean? Well, the United States has captured longtime Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, and the fallout is already shaking the region. One country that is feeling the heat more than anyone else, that is none other than Cuba. And with Venezuelan oil suddenly cut off and Washington turning up the pressure, Cuba is now facing one of the most dangerous moments in its modern history. So what exactly happened and how bad could things get for Havana? Well, let us break it down. Well, let us just shed light on how Venezuela kept Cuba running. Let's break it down. For years, Venezuela was Cuba's economic lifeline. Caracas supplied tens of thousands of barrels of oil per day, keeping Cuba's power plants, transport systems, and industries alive. And in exchange, Cuba provided security and intelligence support to Venezuela's leadership. It wasn't charity, it was survival. Even as Venezuela's own oil industry declined, it still sent roughly 26,500 barrels a day to Cuba, covering nearly half of the island's fuel needs. But that lifeline is now gone. Since the capture of Maduro, what has exactly changed? Let us break it down. Earlier this month, the US forces launched a military operation in Venezuela that resulted in the capture of Nicolas Maduro and the seizure of Venezuelan oil tankers. And since then, shipping data shows zero fuel shipments leaving Venezuelan ports for Cuba. Washington didn't just act quietly either. President Donald Trump went public, posting a blunt warning online. There will be no more oil or money going to Cuba. Zero. He urged Havana to make a deal with the United States before, as he put it, that it's too late. Well, Cuba's economy was already on the edge. Well, here is the big problem that Cuba was already in the crisis before losing Venezuelan oil. And across the island, people are dealing with daily blackouts, fuel shortages, empty supermarket shelves, hospitals struggling to find medicine, electricity cuts now lost for hours, and sometimes most of the day. And transportation is breaking down, food production is falling, and as conditions worsen, immigration is exploding, with record numbers of Cubans leaving for the US in search of stability. So imagine losing your biggest energy supplier in the middle of all that. Well, after all this, a question arises that can anyone really replace Venezuela? Well, if we think in short, the answer would be not really. Mexico has stepped in as a limited supplier, but officials admit that the shipments are small and inconsistent. Buying fuel on the open market is far more expensive, and US sanctions make it even harder. Cuba's own refineries are outdated and struggling, meaning the nation now depends more on imported refined fuel, which is harder to secure and easier to block. And what would be the result? More blackouts, more shortages, and more pressure on the government. Well, after all this, Havana also pushes back. Cuban President Diaz-Canel has rejected Trump's demands outright. He accused Washington of turning global politics into a business and insisted that Cuba will not be dictated to. In his words, Cuba is free, independent, and sovereign, which is ready to defend the homeland to the last drop of blood. Cuban officials also claim US sanctions alone cost the country over $7.5 billion in just 1 year, worsening every aspect of daily life. What would happen next? US intelligence believes Cuba's government is not collapsing yet. But without Venezuelan fuel, governing becomes much harder. Power grids, agriculture, transport, and manufacturing are all at risk. And with Washington now openly flexing its power in the region, the message is clear that Cuba is under pressure like never before. Well, here is the final question for you all. Is this the beginning of real change in Cuba, or just another chapter in a 60-year standoff with the United States of America? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you found this breakdown helpful, like, subscribe to the Savera, and hit the bell so you don't miss what happens next.